Matt Taibbi, Jesus, like the stories just keep coming. I'm not even kidding. Michael Schellenberger tweeted this out last night, and I think if you're not on Twitter, you probably have not seen this. So let's get into it. Michael Schellenberger tweeted, while Matt Taibbi and I were testifying before Congress on the weaponization of the federal government, an IRS agent showed up at his house. What an amazing coincidence. So let's all remember, let's recap here for a second. It was like two and a half weeks or so ago, Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger testified before Congress for the subcommittee hearing about the Twitter files and the information that they found. We talked about that. We discussed that on this show. So we talked about what a spectacle event that was. But apparently, while they were doing that, the IRS decided to make a visit to Matt Taibbi's house. Now, I have a video clip here I want to show you, because when I tell you about these government agencies, I'm not kidding around. Like, I just don't trust them. And that doesn't just mean the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. That also includes the IRS, too. I don't trust them either. And I find it to be very odd that the day that he was testifying, they just happened to appear at his house. First of all, when does the IRS make house calls? Anybody? I've never heard of this. I've never heard of the IRS just showing up at someone's house, especially unannounced. So that's really bizarre to me. So when I tell you guys, when Matt Taibbi first dropped that very first Twitter file release, my response was protect Matt Taibbi at all costs. And this is an example as to why. Because I knew they were going to be coming after him based on the information that has been released. Now I have this clip here, so shout out to Case Study QB for this. Listen to this. Now, Fox News had a discussion about this particular situation. Let's get into it.
Effort to exercise control over the press. And so on that level, it's absolutely disturbing.
I believe the word is chilling. It chills free speech and coverage by journalists. An op-ed called out the newly beefed up IRS, remember, 87,000 extra agents. The fear of many Americans is that flush with its new $80 billion in funding from Congress, the IRS will unleash its fearsome power against political opponents. Mr. Taibbi deserves to know why the agency decided to pursue him with a very strange house call. Ben Dominant, Fox News contributor, editor-at-large for The Spectator. We should all pay attention to this one.
Absolutely, Harris. Look, I think that this is actually a layup for the President of the United States. President Joe Biden should come out. He should demand answers on why this happened. He should demand answers for why the IRS would engage in something that was clearly designed. I don't believe for a second that this was something that was coincidental.
I don't believe this was a coincidence at all either. It's the timing. It's the timing of it. And again, I am not familiar with the IRS just making these unannounced house calls. That seems very strange to me. I would expect the homeowner would have to agree to that in some way, shape, or form, or he would have been contacted beforehand. But I think everybody needs to be paying attention to what we said before about these government agencies and this type of overreach, where if you speak about something in a certain way that they find to be problematic, or if you reveal certain information that could implicate them, they see you as a threat. They see you as a target.
To go after Matt Taibbi on the day that he was testifying in front of Congress. He's a truth teller. He's someone who has been, a thorn in the side of major powerful entities in the United States for a long time by reporting the truth about them. And the fact that the IRS would go after him, would show up at his door. I think a lot of us have gotten, nasty letters maybe from the IRS over the years over something or the other, but we've never had somebody like that show up at your door. And I do think that this is a new thing that is going to happen underneath an IRS that is totally empowered, that has been funded to the nth degree by Democrats who believe that they ought to go after a lot of people who are engaging in totally normal behavior on all of the different exchange apps that exist. You know,
let's talk about this for just a second. Let's all remember it was the Democratic Party that decided to fund the IRS more. Remember that. That was just a couple months ago. They wanted to give them more money. They said, we need more IRS agents. To do what? To make house calls? What were they there for? What dirt were they trying to gather? Let me make very clear. They weren't there just to be there. They weren't there to drop off cookies and say, welcome to the neighborhood. They were there to see if they could try to find any type of dirt in reference to probably asset, wealth, financial information on Matt Taibbi to make his findings about the Twitter files to be less credible. That's what they were there for. Very, very strange times, man, I tell you.
On Venmo, on Cash App, et cetera, where they think that they could try to dig down into the income that people are making through those apps and find new ways to go after them. Matt Taibbi is obviously a Substack user, as am I, and he's someone who has been, you know, a very popular newsletter writer for quite a long time. The idea that the IRS would send someone to his house over a dispute that apparently involves them owing him money is something that I just think is unbelievable. The president should demand answers from this, and he should demand answers from the IRS, and the person who did this or who enabled this should be have to answer for why they did and make clear why this was not just an act of political intimidation.
Yeah. And not just Joe Biden, but I feel like everyone, this is a particular situation where I feel like Democrats and Republicans should come together over and push back against this type of behavior. Because it can happen to any one of you. It doesn't matter. The IRS is not sitting back trying to figure out if you're a Republican or a Democrat. So you would think on this particular issue, you would think that they would actually have bipartisanship over pushing back against this type of overreach. It could happen to any one of them.
What they were trying to reach him for, according to a note that they left, was about his 2021 tax return and one in 2018, that those returns were rejected owing to concerns over identity theft. So it was like, oh, we're trying to help you out. We thought we'd come out. I mean, you mentioned it so beautifully. This is a layup for the president. If only he actually might know what that is. Your last quick thought on it. And move forward.
No, I think that this is a situation where Democrat or Republican, people don't like the IRS, and they certainly don't like the idea of the IRS knocking on your door. I think that this is an example where the president, if this was not just a partisan, you know, going after someone who, by the way, is left of center, Matt Taibbi, you know, I think this is a situation where the White House should basically should engage in this question and find some answers so that we know what the basic issue is and why this ended up happening.
And we need to think about something else, too, that I want to bring up. Typically, a lot of times the IRS is mainly focusing on working class people. Okay. They're usually not focused on, you know, because if they were focused on wealthy people, then all these billionaires wouldn't have all these loopholes and these tax breaks that they're able to get around, and the IRS doesn't even pay interest to it. So you have to question it. Now, this article here from the Wall Street Journal says the IRS makes a strange house call on Matt Taibbi. This is crazy, man. I'm telling you, this is crazy. And there's Jim Jordan there. I'm going to tell you about Jim Jordan's role in all of this. Make it a little bit bigger there. Okay. Let me go right here. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan sent a letter Monday to IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen seeking an explanation for why journalist Matt Taibbi received an unannounced home visit from an IRS agent. We've seen the letter, and both the circumstances and timing of the IRS on this journalist raise serious questions. Mr. Taibbi has provoked the ear of the Democrats and other journalists for his role in researching Twitter records and then releasing internal communications from the social media giant that expose its censorship and its contacts with government officials. This effort has already inspired government bullying, with Chair Lena Khan's Federal Trade Commission targeting new Twitter owner Elon Musk and demanding the company identify all journalists granted access to the Twitter files. So I want to highlight this here because these people are going to be targeted. They're going to have a target on their back. Just realistically, that's what it is. Now, Mr. Taibbi has told Mr. Jordan's committee that an IRS agent showed up at his personal residence in New Jersey on March 9th. That happens to be the same day Mr. Taibbi testified before the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government about what he learned about Twitter. The tax man left a note instructing Mr. Taibbi to call the IRS 4 days later. Let me get this straight, people. So the IRS shows up to your house. You're not there. They leave a note. Doesn't this sound a little bizarre to you? They didn't send an email, phone call. Mr. Taibbi was told in a call with the agent that both his 2018 and 2021 tax returns had been rejected owing to concerns over identity theft. 2018. 2021, I could possibly understand. But 2018, it's 2023. So for those of us who file taxes, I've been doing this for a long time. Usually you get an email notification that tells you if it's been rejected or accepted. I usually get that email pretty quickly after I've filed my taxes, right? Okay. So it's 2023 and they are now coming back and telling him that the 2018 is the one that's really suspicious to me. 2021 could be a possibility because it's within like that 2-year bracket. But 2018, let's go on. And they're saying it's because it's over identity theft. Okay. I don't believe that, by the way. I don't believe that at all. When you file your taxes, right, there's a couple of things they ask for. Obviously, your social security number. That's the big one, right? Whenever you want to go back and access that report, or whenever you want to access the IRS website to see if you're going to get a refund or how much you owe, you have to enter your personal information that they have, and it's supposed to match the information that they have on file. And if it doesn't, you can't get into the site. So I find it very strange that here it is 2023 and now they want to come back and say, oh, 2018 was rejected over identity theft. Really? All these years later? Mr. Taibbi has provided the committee with documentation showing his 2018 return had been electronically accepted. What do you know? And he says the IRS never notified him or his accountants of a problem after he filed that 2018 return more than 4.5 years ago. So like I said, this doesn't seem normal to me. Doesn't seem normal to me at all. And then, like I said, you have to question the timing of it. This is the same day when he had the hearing. He says the IRS initially rejected his 2021 return, which he later refiled, and it was rejected again, even though Mr. Taibbi says his accountants refiled it with an IRS provided PIN number. See, that's the thing I was telling you about when I said that you have to enter in information that matches the information that they have. And if you don't, like if you don't have that PIN number and all those things, you can't get in. Mr. Taibbi notes that in neither case was the issue monetary and that the IRS owes him a considerable sum. So that's the thing. They actually owe him money. The bigger question is, when did the IRS start to dispatch agents for surprise house calls? Typically, when the IRS challenges some part of a tax return, it sends a dunning letter, or it might seek more information from the taxpayer or tax preparer. If the IRS wants to audit a return, it schedules a meeting at the agent's office. It doesn't drop by unannounced. And that's what I was trying to explain to you guys. Because even for me, like in the past, I remember one time I did have an issue. I think I forgot to include my grad school stuff at that point in time. And they did reject it. And they were like, you got to do this. And I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. So I added that too. And then it was accepted. And by the way, when it's accepted, it's like, it was quick. It was not something that took a month or years or anything like that. But I've never heard of the IRS just making surprise house call visit. That is very concerning. And it makes me wonder if that was actually an IRS agent that showed up to his house. The curious timing of this visit on the heels of the FTC demand that Twitter turn over names of journalists raises questions about potential intimidation. And Mr. Jordan is right to want to see documents and communications relating to Taibbi's visit. The fear of many Americans is that flush with its new $80 billion in funding from Congress, the IRS will unleash its fearsome power against political opponents. Mr. Taibbi deserves to know why the agency decided to pursue him with a very strange house call. We all have to remember about how these government agencies work. If you don't know the story about Fred Hampton, you'll know that they actually used an infiltrator. They had another Black man join the Black Panther Party, his chapter, to pretend to be one of them, and he was actually there to take them down. He was actually the one, I don't want to say poison, but he was the one who aided in subduing Fred Hampton so that he could be killed. So this type of behavior to me is very, very odd and strange. And you guys need to be wary of something like that too. There's this kind of scam that goes around where people have been targeted before by people who will say that they are IRS agents, and they will send them a text message, or they'll call them on the phone and say, we need your help with this. And then they'll ask you for information, and the information that you give them actually helps them steal your identity, and you're actually giving them money without realizing it. You have to be very wary about that. The IRS will always, mostly always, respond to you with some sort of letter. Just like if you owe the IRS money, they will send you a letter that says this is the amount that you owe after you filed your taxes. You have to be very careful. There's a lot of scams that go on, and then some of these people could just be there to take you out. Now, I'm not trying to say that's happening to Matt Taibbi, but the timing of the visit is very strange, in my opinion. So we have to protect Matt Taibbi at all costs. I wasn't kidding when I said that when the first Twitter file dropped. Now, Matt has responded to this. He said, I've been reassured now that there's no problem, but I still look forward to hearing an explanation. Now, this was dropped earlier today, and I don't know who this is, but the New York Independent said could be Matt Taibbi is a tax cheat. He should release his taxes. And Matt responded and said, excuse me, what the hell is that? And learn to spell. Yeah, he misspelled his name there. And Matt was responding to here, this tweet from Freedom of the Press, which says, if the IRS visit to Matt Taibbi's house had anything to do with his reporting or recent congressional testimony, it would be a disturbing attack on press freedoms. Let's hope the government quickly and credibly explains. And this is very true. Yeah, Susan, he deserves an explanation. Yeah. Also, what would have happened? See, this is the thing. Like, obviously, they knew he was testifying. He wasn't there. It wasn't a secret. And they showed up there while he wasn't there. What if someone else would have been there? What is happening here? This is an attack on freedom of press and freedom of speech. And this is something I continue to talk about because we really have to understand here what they are trying to do. I call that intimidation, showing up to someone's house the day they have the hearing. I call that some type of a threat, so to speak, showing up to their house the day that they have the hearing. I don't think it was a coincidence. Obviously, they still haven't issued an explanation as to why this happened, but somebody needs to explain something. Someone has some explaining to do. And that's my take on that. Scary times. And it's not just Matt. Okay. Kim Iverson recently, she tweeted, because those of you who are not on Twitter, I don't know if you see some of these things, but Kim Iverson, who recently interviewed Alan Dershowitz. Now, this is the guy who was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, right? Okay, he wasn't too happy with Kim at the end of that interview. Apparently, he didn't want to come on there and talk about Jeffrey Epstein. You're Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. What did you want her to talk to you about? Cereal? I don't know. So he got upset with her on air, and he said some things like, I'm never coming back here. You just sandbag your guests, yada, yada. Well, Kim asked him pretty legitimate questions about his involvement, which I thought was fair. Literally, after that interview, I think it was 2 days or so, she put on Twitter that the cameras showed that someone tried to break into her house. I don't know. This is what I'm saying. So that's why I don't think these things are coincidences. I'm sorry. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric, sorry. I always want to say Roger. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Usually when they make house calls, it's to take your shit. I'm thinking when Kutcher punked Timberlake pretending to be the IRS, or Red Fox got his stuff seized by the IRS. Right. It's not just to come by and like just pay a visit. Like, very strange, very strange. And again, I question the timing of it.